The icy wind screamed across the barren landscape as our headlights cut through the swirling snow, revealing the forlorn silhouette of a gas station on a remote alpine pass. Stephan and I, driven by an adventurous yet reckless desire to explore the less traveled paths, found ourselves seeking refuge here, far from the nearest town. It was supposed to be a brief respite, a moment to stretch and breathe before the arduous journey continued. But the deserted station promised more than just shelter from the relentless storm. The station was eerily silent, save for the muffled groan of the wind against the glass doors that marked its entrance. The door hung slightly ajar, swinging gently as if nudging us to enter. Inside, the air was stagnant, thick with the smell of old coffee and rusting metal. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting uneven shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. Our footsteps echoed in the empty space, a stark reminder of the station's isolation. We roamed the aisles, finding nothing but rows of dusty shelves stocked haphazardly with long-expired goods and outdated maps of mountain trails. The counter was cluttered with scattered magazines and a cash register that sat open, a few coins scattered inside. It seemed as though the attendant had left in a hurry, or perhaps unwillingly. We glanced at each other, unease settling in our stomachs, but curiosity urged us to search further. The back of the station held a door marked "Private" slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. The storage room was cold and damp, with boxes stacked haphazardly and an old, moth-eaten coat hanging from a rusty hook on the wall. The air here was even heavier, filled with the scent of mildew and something faintly metallic that I couldn't quite place. As our eyes adjusted to the dim light, the outlines of more personal items became visible: a small, framed photograph of a smiling family, a child's brightly colored backpack pushed into a corner, and a worn diary lying atop a crate. Driven by an inexplicable compulsion, I flipped through the diary. The entries began routinely enough, notes on shipments and sales, but as I flipped further, the tone shifted. The words became frantic, scribbled in shaky handwriting, tales of strange noises in the dead of night, shadows flitting just beyond the range of the station's lights, feelings of being watched from the woods that pressed close against the building. We decided to leave the storage room, the unease growing with each step back into the main area of the station. That's when we heard a soft thud coming from the direction of the roof. Frozen, we listened as it continued, a slow, deliberate pattern that moved across the ceiling, pausing directly above us. As we stood motionless, the station's lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness for heart-stopping seconds before sputtering back to a dim glow. The temperature seemed to drop, breaths turning to mist in the cold air as the sense of something otherworldly intensified. Stephan moved toward the door, his silhouette tense against the weak light. We rushed back to our car, the wind howling as if chasing us, whipping the snow into furious spirals. Inside, the safety of the vehicle felt like a thin shield against the night's terror. We waited, eyes fixed on the station, half expecting something to follow us out of the building. As dawn bled its first light over the horizon, we attempted to shake off the cold dread that had settled in our bones. Yet the safety of daylight felt illusory, the memory of the night's terror too vivid to be dismissed by the rising sun. The road before us was scarcely visible, blanketed under a thick layer of snow that stretched endlessly into the surrounding wilderness. Our journey down the mountain was as treacherous as the haunted hours we'd spent waiting in the car. The drive was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts, replaying the eerie occurrences at the gas station. The monotonous whir of the engine and the crunch of snow beneath the tires provided a steady backdrop to our racing minds. Occasional gusts of wind rocked the vehicle, a ghostly reminder of the night's unseen horrors. Miles down the road, the stark, barren trees gave way to denser forests, the morning light casting long shadows through the thick pines. The deeper we drove into the forest, the more oppressive the silence became. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath, watching us intruders with wary eyes. Then, without warning, the car began to behave erratically. The engine sputtered, the lights flickered, and the dashboard instruments danced wildly. Stephan struggled to maintain control as the vehicle jerked violently, veering off the road and coming to a shuddering halt deep in the snowbank. We sat, stunned, the abrupt stop leaving us disoriented. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. Outside, the untouched snow reflected the weak sunlight, a vast expanse of white that seemed to isolate us from the rest of the world. With the car incapacitated, we had little choice but to seek help on foot. Gathering our courage and the few supplies we had, flashlights, a map, and some food, we prepared to venture into the forest. The cold bit at our faces as we stepped outside, the snow creaking under our boots. As we trudged through the dense underbrush, the forest seemed to close in around us. The trees, heavy with snow, leaned towards each other, whispering secrets in the light wind. Every snap of a twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot, making us flinch and look over our shoulders. The eerie feeling of being watched returned, magnified by the isolation and the vastness of the wilderness. After an hour of walking, the forest opened up to a clearing, where the remnants of an old campsite lay. A circle of stones, blackened by fire, lay at the center, surrounded by a few discarded items: a rusty can, a torn piece of cloth, and strangely, a child's doll, its face smeared with dirt and missing one eye. The sight was unsettling, hinting at stories and tragedies swallowed by the forest. Pushing past the discomfort, we continued, following what looked like old trail markers, now mostly covered by layers of snow and moss. Our progress was slow, hindered by the deep snow and the growing sense that we were not alone. Shadows seemed to flit just beyond our line of sight, and several times we stopped, certain we heard footsteps other than our own. As the day waned, the light dimmed, swallowed by the thick canopy above. Realizing we could not reach civilization before dark, we decided to make camp in a small, sheltered hollow. Night in the forest was a chorus of sounds: howling wind, creaking branches, and the occasional distant thud that seemed too deliberate to be anything natural. Huddled by a small fire, we spoke little, each of us lost in our own apprehensive thoughts. The fire cast a small circle of light around us, beyond which the darkness seemed almost solid, a wall of black that encroached with every flickering of the flames. That night, sleep was fitful, filled with unsettling dreams of shifting shadows and whispered voices. Stephan woke from a nightmare, gasping, his eyes wide with fear. He whispered that in his dream, the shadows had faces, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. As dawn approached, the sounds of the forest shifted, the night's menace receding with the shadows. We packed our belongings, eager to leave the hollow and its haunting memories behind. The hike back to civilization was long and fraught with the unspoken agreement that some places, like the gas station in the forest, were best left undisturbed, their secrets too dark to be unearthed. By the time we emerged from the trees, the relief of survival was tempered by the knowledge that we had touched something ancient and malevolent, a darkness that would linger in our minds, a stark reminder of the night the mountains whispered back.